Okay, I think we can make a start. All right, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Charlena, and I'm part of the IIBA Melbourne branch team. I'm delighted to be your host this evening for our guest speaker, KK Ong, as he shares secrets behind AI project successes with us. I'd like to first of all begin with an acknowledgement to country. Okay. IIBA Australia acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present with us today. Now, before I introduce KK, I just would like to run through a couple of general housekeeping type things for today's webinar. So first of all questions will be answered at the end of the presentation, but if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please utilize the Q&A functionality in Zoom, which should just be in the menu at the bottom of your screen, and you can just type your question straight into this box. And when we get to the end of KK's presentation, we'll then go through the questions. If you have any technical support queries throughout the presentation, please also pop them in the Q&A box, and we'll try and attend to these as soon as we can while the presentation is going on. This webinar will be recorded, and within a week, a copy of the recording will be emailed to the email address that you've registered with for this webinar. Just to note that only the recording will be shared and not the actual slide deck itself. But if you would like further information about any of the content, you're welcome to contact KK directly. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker tonight, KK.
Hello.
So a little bit about KK. So KK has been blessed with over 20 years of practitioner experience in harnessing the power of data, predictive AI and automation since 2002. KK has delivered multiple industry firsts and brings over 20 years of global technology delivery experience across air freight, supply chain, logistics, building and construction, emergency services and government. Having served 2 Fortune 500 global service icons, Singapore Airlines and Deutsche Post DHL, KK brings on board world-class service excellence and best practice approach to AI and automation. As value chains transform to compete in a zero marginal cost economy, through thought leadership to break new grounds is more critical than ever. Savvy in the Asia-Pacific culture, KK is trilingual and proficient in cross-cultural communications and advanced virtual teaming, for example, fully functional metaverse. KK is here to share change agent experiences in this exciting AI and automation field. Please join me to welcome our speaker for this evening, KK. Over to you, KK.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I'll just start off and I'll cue you, Shalina, when we need to change slides. So we'll probably go straight to the contents. Next slide, please. So these are the things that we're going to be talking about tonight. And just a little bit of informal, you had a formal introduction. So I come from an island called Penang in Malaysia. So at teenage 1992, basically I got a scholarship to Singapore, spent 18 years there studying mechanical and production engineering. And in Singapore was where I went into my first AI experience with Singapore Airlines, which I will touch upon shortly. And I am fairly new here, 2008 entry point to Melbourne, and currently I'm working for the government Department of Home Affairs. That's it's there's a new name, DFFH, Department of Families, Fairness and Housing. So that's where I am, but my passion is in the AI area. So next slide, please. So we're here to talk about the phenomenon that the industry is facing today. What is the underlying cause of it? So this slide shows us a little bit of history of how machine intelligence is accelerating rapidly as things become cheaper. So if you looked at the first 20 years from 1990 to roughly 2011, it took a long time for so-called basic intelligence to appear in the form of IBM's Watson. That's when our attention got, that's when it caught our attention when Watson beat a human champion in Jeopardy. So as time goes on, you've actually witnessed an acceleration where in 2016, acceleration of capability, where Google's DeepMind AlphaGo beat an 18-time world gold champion. That's a very complex game that the computer has beaten a human. And within a very short span of a year, AlphaGo Zero, which is a updated version of AlphaGo, beat AlphaGo itself, just from self-learning within 3 days. So as you can see, the speed of development, it's really blinding. And not only does the speed go higher, the cost is also going lower. The next slide, please. So the primer slide for this presentation is talking about data smoke and business fire. And we all know about the saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. So as data availability and computing power explode, the speed of change and the degree of disruption is accelerating. So the acceleration is so pervasive that we often now feel that we're always behind the curve. For example, reporting 20 years ago used to have lagging data. The last decade, data is near real time. However, the new normal for competitive companies is now to have accurate and actionable near future prediction. So no, lagging is definitely not enough. Real time is now becoming insufficient. What we are needing moving forward is to have accurate and actionable near future predictions. Machine-derived insights are powerful because there's no human subjectivity, emotion, and bias. And machine-mined big data intelligence, cross-silo insights, it enables process steering, active risk management, new ways of increasing productivity. There's so many new value that can be derived when we look at the data across different silos that doesn't get shared traditionally. So this is just a little bit of a primer before we move into the actual area of artificial intelligence, because data is like the feedstock, right? The raw material for AI to be able to work. Next slide, please. So I'm hoping that your time spent here will be worthwhile, because we are part of the agents of change. I'm basically a project manager by training, and my bread and butter has been in project delivery. And I work a lot with business analysts. So basically our mission is we want to help business use data in new ways, drive transformation, and co-create a new era. Next slide, please. So a little bit more on relevant experience that I have. Next slide, please. I'll skip through this fairly quickly. I've introduced my background in project delivery. We basically are very familiar with standing up teams to deliver AI projects, which I'll describe shortly, and also automation, process steering capabilities. So I've got over 24 years of global program and project delivery over 7 industries, basically. Started with Singapore Airlines, that's air freight. And then I went to DHL. We've got supply chain, end-to-end supply chain, IT delivery experience. I've come over here to Melbourne in 2008. We were doing aircraft spare parts, inventory, technology programs. I've gone into CFA, basically emergency services. We worked with Singapore government before, productivity and stats board and all that. So I'll skip this slide. We'll go to the next slide, which is more important. So one of the first AI projects that I've done was in Singapore Airlines Cargo. So what this project was about is just pretend that you are a lobster farmer in Cologne, right? You want your lobster to be in a distributor warehouse let's say you're a lobster farmer in Cairns, sorry, did I say Cologne? Cairns in Australia, and you want the lobster to be in Cologne. In order for the lobster to make its way, the lobster shipment, perishable shipment, to make its way from Cairns to Cologne, you would need to have at least a 4-leg transportation segment. For example, you need to go from Cairns to a hub, Sydney hub, to get out of the country. And from Sydney, you need to fly to Singapore or Bangkok. And then you have to have the 3rd leg from Bangkok or Singapore to Frankfurt. And from Frankfurt or Charles de Gaulle, you need to have an internal flight or trucking. But for a case of perishable cargo, you probably need to have an internal flight. So to get 4 legs of transportation confirmed, the competitors of Singapore Airlines Cargo would take at least, because of time difference, handling arrangements, you need to have the aircraft schedules to match. It would take competitors around 3 to 4 days at the fastest to be able to confirm the route, let alone know what rate to charge in the future. So what happened is we basically built an AI project over it. And at the end of the day, the deliverable was we can book a cargo from Cairns to Cologne in 45 seconds. So a lot of things are involved. We have route selection behind the scenes. We needed to engage scientists from Stanford in order to help us to do the rate prediction, because we need to know what is the rate that we can offer, for example, in 2 months' time, which will be profitable for the company, yet it's appealing for the customer. So as you can kind of imagine, there's a lot of AI that has to be done beforehand, and within 45 seconds, an answer needs to be given to the customer, depending on the amount and the rate that he or she is willing to pay. You'll get different routes, and every night before activity picks up, our computers will be churning pre-calculated city pairs, preparing pre-calculations of semi-complete routes, because routes schedules change on a daily basis. And to prepare for that 45 seconds, there's a lot of work, a lot of process that goes behind it. So that's just my first foray into the AI world. Next slide, please. The next area that I've chanced upon is the combination of not exactly AI, but more of intelligent service delivery. So apart from AI, one of the things that I am good at is in the area of service delivery. So what we've done in Countryside Authority was we had to design a service delivery ecosystem for mission critical comms. For this case, is a dispatch network. So dispatch comms network. So in this particular project, what we pioneered was a service breach prevention advanced warning system called Steer Clear. So when normal service delivery system handles fire when it happened, we try to address and detect events before the incidents happen. So our Steer Clear system basically lets the communications command center to know issues before they really become a full-fledged incident. So Visual Live is another innovation that we did, where we turn service level agreements into visual indicators, because often when there's an emergency, when you're in a rush, your eyes and your mind, you don't have time to read words. Graphics and pictures are absolutely critical for sub-second reaction and ability for you to know what you need to act upon. So that's another kind of innovation that we do. The other stuff would be Smart Charge. Smart Charge is a no-brainer. CFA, we used to pay vendors like Telstra, vendor service costs, service charges, regardless of performance. So what we did was we actually tied performance to payment, which is a no-brainer in the old world that I used to operate in Singapore Airlines, but that actually saved us millions every year, taxpayers' money. Next slide, please. The most exciting experience that I've done in terms of delivery of AI systems has to be the performance hub in V-Lines. So what we did was a proof of concept where we have a twin engine system. The first engine is the prediction engine. We can predict the performance of the trains, for example, punctuality and availability, and it will give you the confidence level of the prediction. And not only that, we will basically tell you why, for example, punctuality went from expected 97% to 82. Root cause, like the Northeast corridor would have a trespasser event. Chance of it happening is 70%. If it happens, the minutes of delay is X. And if you are an owner of the business, knowing that bad things is going to happen is not good enough, right? What are you going to do about it? So that's where the second engine, the process engine, comes in. So the process engine is able to basically steer the boots on the ground, the complex value chains, quite effectively through an app that the people would use. If I have time later in question and answers, you can ask me about it. I can explain to you how this process engine, although it's less sexy than a prediction engine, is actually more useful for the boots on the ground. We did a case study on trains that hit kangaroos, basically kangaroo strikes. Because when the unionized train drivers, their train hits a kangaroo in the morning, which happens a lot. If it is a bad day, 10% of the services can be down because they do not drive the train if it is all splattered in blood, and potentially if it hits a very dense animal like a wombat, you may even have mechanical damage. So that's the twin engine that we developed, the prediction engine and the process steering engine. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of a primer before we could go into what great looks like in AI and then the lessons that I've learned in my journey. Perhaps the next slide, please. So AI and automation, there's a famous saying from a professor in Duke University. AI and automation is like teenage sex. Everyone thinks everyone else is doing it, but no one is doing it properly. Right. So there are lots and lots of things happening in the AI world, from trying to create the first useful quantum computer to agreeing on a common IoT standard, which is Meta 1.0, right? So that the different sensors and devices can share information. In a household, will be like the fridge will be able to talk to your Google Home. The Google Home will be able to talk to your watch, talking to your security system, your camera. So, but in the company, it will be very, very much more interesting. For example, in the construction sector, you've got a huge paradigm shift happening in the way data gets ingested from a physical world to a logical world, which is the digital world. We are handing over the baton from humans to machines as IoT becomes cheaper and more capable in gathering information. Human touch points are usually subjective and usually regarded as dirty data. And there's this tug of war. There's a lot of other things happening. There's tug of war between centralization and decentralization. If you guys are into crypto and blockchain, you roughly know what's happening. You've got decentralized currency, Bitcoin versus centralized fiat currency. A lot of things are happening there. You've got massive data collection initiatives, like future CBDCs will be collecting a lot of information. As it is, Google search is already collecting a lot of information about our habits, and they are being used in different ways. So other things that AI is being used for would be, for example, the Ukraine war. There's a company called Palantir in the US, who, from my understanding, they helped the Ukrainian army win the first few initial battles against Russia. That's AI in practice. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of fancy stuff going on, as you can see in the global trends. But what we need to focus on, because if you were to focus on all the clouds that you saw just now, you wouldn't be able to do something meaningful because the focus is too broad. So what I'm attempting to do is to frame AI in a little bit more narrow but usable focus that's more applicable to the industries that you work in. So what does great look like in AI in practice? Next slide, please. So first we start with definitions. I've got numbers on the slide so that if you've got questions, you can refer to the slide numbers. It's easy for us to come back. So just quick definition, it's kind of my own collection of definitions. There's a lot of definition going on, but I think this is the best that I like. So as in real life intelligence, right? Artificial intelligence has many tiers, right? You've got basic automated execution of tasks. That's very low level intelligence. There are people who are very good in a particular focused task. So that's very niche. And there are characters that are just outright genius. So there are many different levels of intelligence. So AI is similar. There's a varied spectrum of levels of intelligence in the fabric of AI. So I define AI as the science of making machine do things as if it's done by an intelligent person. And what's machine learning? So these are all the terms that have been thrown around, but we need to pull it down before we can move further, right? Machine learning is basically leveraging mathematical and learning models for software to value add, learning that's relying on patterns and inferences instead of traditional coding. And what's big data? You guys probably already know most of it. That's large, diverse set of information in terms of volume, variety, and velocity. That's what they call 3 V's. Some people have 4 V's, but you need to just get the gist of it. That's good enough. Next slide, please. And then to frame AI well so that we're not so scattered and we have a proper focus is the maturity model. This is the one that I like best and I used a lot. So there are different maturity levels that any organization, commercial organization, or even military organization, defense organization can have in AI. First, the most basic level is, do we even know what's happening, right? So real-time dashboard tells you what's happening, right? A lot of companies may not even know what's happening. That's level 1. Level 2 is, if you know what's happening, do you know why it's happening? Do you know what are the driving factors that results in the outcome that you are observing, right? And level 3 is a little bit of a deeper level. You're able to baseline and benchmark and know whether it's happened before and it's because of that trigger. This is what we need to do differently. So it's a reflective level of maturity. And then level 4 is for organizations that are very competitive. They not only need to know real time, but because they're moving very fast. And if they know real time. The moment they know the status of a certain operation is already too late. You need to be able to predict and try to prevent it. So that predictive level is the next level of maturity. And then level 5 is where you can, after you predict certain stuff, you know how to steer your organizations to avoid the problems that you predict or to capitalize on the opportunities that you also predict. So that's problem and opportunities are just different sides of the same coin. And then if an organization has achieved all these 5 levels, there's still the next 2 levels. Those are the strategic levels. For example, if you use bots, for example, if an airline uses bots to replace, say, 600 Filipino staff in Philippines, outsourced to do price beat guarantee. Bots have been used. In the case that I know, there are 4 bots that replaces 600 staff doing price beat guarantee, right? Do we have a counter offensive if our competitor airline, right, are deploying the bots to log into our system to check things? Do we know how to detect those bots? So those are counter offensives or offensive gaming strategies that if you have the basic AI machinery and capability, you can operate all the way from level 1 to 6 and 7. Next slide, please. And what does the typical AI Center of Excellence look like? It's important in an organization that's serious about AI, because IT nowadays, organizations used to run IT, right? And the arrival of Amazon Web Services, Azure, Google Cloud, they all sort of inverted commas stealing the value add that the IT organization used to do. And in the last 10 years, roughly 10 years, you can see the transformation of the IT staff running IT to the IT staff managing IT as a service. It's actually a different mindset. And a lot of people who used to run IT is struggling to manage IT as a service because it is a totally different mindset. It's a service delivery mindset. But with this erosion, I call it, of the value add, what I think the new IT department of the future needs to do, because the value add is already taken up by the giants that is monopolizing the industry, there's just 3 or 4 of them. We need to be in this area to build an AI delivery capability. And these are the 6 key AI areas. If you know the areas in a structured way, you are able to then focus your organization resources to be good in 1 or more or all 6 of the areas. So the first area is called autonomous systems. So autonomous systems are where hardware and software replaces more of the value chain, independent and starting to outdo the humans. So basically, automating stuff, right? It's affordable, it's dependable, it's 24/7. So examples of autonomous systems are mapping drones that is able to gather geo-information services, hazardous mining bots, fully autonomous plasterer, that's for building industry. You have bots that can render and paint. You have RPAs in the mix. I'll talk about RPA and dangers and potential dangers and high cost of using RPA later. You've got your wannabe robotic process automation platforms, which is the MS Power Automate. You've got open source versions of that, Tech UI. If anyone who is a Singaporean citizen or PR, you have access to free education. If you log into a portal, you can Google for it. So there's many applications from supply chain bots to price beat guarantee, replacement of humans, to digital recruiters and social media bots, basically. So that's one area. So systems and softwares that can automate the usually monotonous things that we do, although they're getting smarter. So that's the first area. Next slide, please. Second area is a more involved field. A lot of data scientists are involved, predictive analytics. Basically, this area is the use of algorithms to predict the near future with high level of confidence. And then for more advanced implementations, you can also highlight root causes with probability ranking. If we have time, I've got extra slides after Q&A that basically will lay out all the different algorithms, the most popular ones that are being used. So if you have time, we'll cover that very quickly. So that's machine learning stuff. So predictive analytics, how does it help the business? Basically, they can predict supply chain timeliness, whether things will arrive in time, for example, for Coles and for Woolworths. If it is delayed, why would it be delayed, right? Transportation services like rail corridors, basically like the V-Line example, we can predict punctuality, we can predict availability of train services. What else? For projects, you can predict financial overrun if it's done by the particular project manager with a particular configuration of team. How much will be the financial overrun? Where are the leakages? Basically, that's the leakages will be the root cause part. What else? That's predictive analytics. Next slide, please. The next area is a very old area. It's called expert systems. This is the only difference with expert systems today versus expert systems 30 years ago is that it's getting cheaper and more affordable and more available to people. So example of expert systems is in the building industry, the designing and blueprinting a building. Basically, computer-aided engineering is an example of an expert system. So you can check whether moving parts clash, for example, in robotics. You have building information management. They have 4, 5, 6 dimensions building information management systems. What are other expert systems? For example, systems that specialize in niche areas like intelligent risk management in projects. So they focus only on risk. There can be other expert systems that help to harvest, incubate, de-risk, and basically monetize innovation. So that's a niche area by itself. So other areas, there are many areas. Other areas are fault management, for example. Systems that can detect a fault in a public transport system, in trains, for example. So there are a lot of things that we can do. There's lots of applications of expert systems. Basically, there are more narrow areas that helps in decision support activities. Next slide, please. The next area, a specialty area in the AI world is if you focus on digital physical interface. So I mentioned before, information in the physical world needs to enter into the logical world, which is the digital world in the form of ones and zeros. So digital physical interface is important. That's where your IoTs come into play. So a lot of companies, they are the ones that the IT departments who are evolving quickly to still maintain good value add, because the traditional value add has been so-called inverted commas taken away by the Amazon Web Services. They've been reduced to just service management. They would have separate department specializing, knowing inside out what IoTs are possible for the industry that they work in. So example of IoT stuff would be machine vision, augmented machine vision. So certain cameras can see and listen. They can, without looking at you, they know who is it walking, because your cadence of your walk, the timing of footsteps, right, coupled with just the height, how your head bobs up and down, they can very quickly identify who a person is without looking at the face. Natural language processing, optical character recognition, those are all the IoT categories in the AI, in this AI subdepartment. Other things will be like radio frequency ID, RFID. This is not new, but the only thing new is the cost has come down, right? And RFID, advanced RFID would be radio frequency ID devices that has extra sensors attached to it. For example, certain RFID device has a UV sensor. So if you put it inside a shipping container, and if you chuck the shipping container on the ship, no one's supposed to open the container, but if you open it once, it registers that someone has returned it because there's UV that goes in. So for pilferage, basically. So lots and lots of applications. Strain gauges for the engineers around here, you would know what strain gauges are. Strain gauges are small devices where you fix, it's like a cellophane tape with a measuring sensor. If you stick it on a beam in a building or the body of a car and the body gets crashed, the voltage in the sensor changes. It sends information through GPS. It sends information through what do you call it? GSM or LTE to the receiver. So that's how strain gauges can work. Or local area network like LoRaWAN, NB-IoT, and the latest standard being Meta enables the different IoT devices to talk to each other. So that's section 4. Let's go to section 5. Next slide. The other specialty area is hyper-personalization. So this we should know quite well, because you will find that when you talk, your phone is listening. The default setting is it listens to what you say. One of the other night I was talking about using my extra solar panel electricity to do Bitcoin mining. I was discussing with my neighbor to see whether it is profitable or not in Australia. Within less than 2 hours, I came back to my computer. It was showing me Bitcoin mining machine ads. Right? So hyper personalization is where when we move from an old mass production world where we produce widgets, 100,000 widgets exactly the same. Nowadays, we have this new model called mass customization. So from one to many, we're moving into the many one-to-one world. So hyper-personalization is the collecting metadata that tries to customize services and products to a particular person's liking. So that's an area by itself. Next, last but not least, virtual multipliers. This is really, really new. Even if you go to Ernst & Young's, you go to EY, Deloitte, they may not be able to tell you much about this, because even Meta is struggling to create their own metaverse. So I was one of the first people from Australia that was about 8 years ago that got involved in an already functioning metaverse. So there's a UK professor that I follow, and I joined him in this metaverse. It's called Cube. He's already delivering projects online, fully virtual. There's avatars, there's different capabilities. He delivered stuff with Glaxo, Harley Davidson, National Health Services. He has an entire business case run from his metaverse. And the way he designed it, the way things work there is mind-blowing. So I can see that as countries or even continents race to get pole position, this is going to be an absolutely important area if you're interested to focus your energy. I tried to build one for Asia Pacific. I couldn't find people who have enough passion and capability to form an even basic team. So a lot of people don't even realize that this is important. It is important because the productivity level you can achieve will ensure that in the very near future, the physical world will not be able to keep up with the productivity of the virtual metaverse if you do it properly. So those are all the 6 areas of AI that I think is relevant for us. Forget about those yellow clouds that I show you, because they will have their own work cut out. And when they're ready for us, we're ready for them. But these are the 6 areas that I think as PMs and BAs and people with influence to the IT organization, that we as an agent of change community need to move into to be able to succeed. Because if you hold the value add, then you are able to feed your family in the next 2 decades. If you don't hold the value add, it's going to be very difficult feeding the family. Next slide, please. So those are so-called relatively more sexy areas, but these traditional areas, process reengineering, data engineering, and cultural transformation is absolutely key enablers for the success of any AI project. So every single project that I have gone through, I think, can you click one more time? There's one missing. Shalina. Yes, somehow we got stuck. So these are the areas that actually underpin the longevity of an AI project. You can do a quick and dirty AI project without doing these things properly. In fact, it wouldn't even succeed, the quick and dirty. But for it to succeed, these 3 rings are absolutely critical. Delivering IT systems without process that underpins it will almost doom it to failure. If you don't engineer your data coming in, right? Like they say, diamonds in, diamonds out. The other saying is garbage in, garbage out. Data engineering is absolutely critical, because that is food for the AI machine, right? If you have dirty food, you don't expect the AI machine to do well. So data engineering is supposed to be and should be the king amongst these 3. The queen is cultural transformation, right? Peter Drucker used to say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. That is very, very true. Because if you got a good strategy but bad culture, the company still fails. And if the company does not change its culture, you will find very, very little support for your AI project to live long. So as long as the specialists leave, everything will snap back to the old mean. So basically, don't underestimate these 3 key enabling pillars. Very important. That's where the BAs come in. Process reengineering, the technical stuff I don't have to teach you. It's usually the people stuff, the people aspects of process reengineering. How do you get cooperation, which I can cover later in Q&A. That's the most sticky bit. The people, process, systems, the people bit. If you conquer the people bit, the process and systems will fall in place most of the time. Next slide, please. So real world lessons, let's get on to the next slide. Lesson number 1, because AI is a new area, a lot of people just read books and then just try to implement what the book says, right? But start by understanding the other way, not the theory. The theory comes later to fit the solution to the problem. Start by understanding BAU means business as usual. Start by understanding the business that you're in. How do they make money? How do they survive? What are the pain points? Right? And use simple, proven technologies. Don't use the latest algorithms. Use proven algorithms, not shiny models from academic research, just to get extra 2 percentage points of improvement. So basically, focus on problems. Next slide. Focus on progress instead of perfection, because this is new, right? Just like startup, deliver value quickly, no gold plating. So I guess this is not rocket science. Just want to remind people, fix small chunks, right? Start with proof of concepts or minimum viable product, because you can't boil the ocean, right? Don't solve everything using machine learning when simple methods with good data suffice. So start somewhere to show that your team is delivering value to business, right? Rather than have a complicated implementation that fails. So it's about garnering trust, is the human factor. And garner support from limited supportive audiences, and basically spinning into good news stories. So not everyone will support AI, because a lot of people will be fearing AI, but there will be people who are forward-looking that can support. So garner the support, start in small steps. Next slide. Number 3, don't underestimate the process re-engineering and the culture change elements. So that's what I have been hammering, the people part, right? Amount of work outside the interesting areas of building and testing machine learning models is huge. There's a lot of work to convince people why they need to change, right? That's the most difficult part. It's often not the technical part. Delays in delivering value undermines credibility of AI program. So small chunks, like I said, very important, but always provide for enough time in process re-engineering, because people are comfortable in doing things the old way. Why should they change? So a lot of focus has to be on the human element. The technical elements, as I said, you guys have probably already got it at the back of your hand, is the human element that needs a little bit of thinking. Some of you guys, our girls, will be naturally good at it, so this may not be an issue, point number 3. But anyway, post-process re-engineering underpins the AI and automation projects. Very important. And usually takes very long. Next one. The other area that's going to potentially give you a lot of surprises is the data integrity issue. A lot of times, data in the business is of low integrity or low quality. Why? If you look at the value chain of the company, a lot of times, more often than not, in traditional industries, you will see that in the value chains there's a lot of data entry points that are subjective and not empirical, and those are the stuff that the data engineering part needs to fix. DIDO, that's diamond in, diamond out. So there's another human face of data, which is data politics, right? Because who's the person putting in the data? How do you convince them and take that value add, inverted commas, away from that person? How do you strategize that? Usually the PM will have to figure that out, but sometimes a lead BA may be given that job. ETL process, basically extract, transform, and load. A disciplined ETL process and standardized documentation to show how things map out and how things get transformed from raw data to usable data is very important. And one of the key principles that we have adopted is what we call decarbonization of the data supply chain. So in any value chain in the company, decarbonize means take out the human, because humans are made of carbon, right? So there's this term, decarbonize the data supply chain. As much as possible, we will replace human-entered information with IoT devices. For example, trains, B-line trains. How do we get so much data from a train? We actually found out that even a train has a black box, and that black box records the braking pressure, the frequency of the train driver braking. Is the train driver speeding when it's approaching bends? If they're speeding, it will destroy the wheels faster, so leading to high maintenance costs. For example, door opening and close. And when does the train start and stop? Everything is recorded. So if it is recorded by machines and sensors, the chances of contaminated data is significantly reduced. So decarbonization of the data supply chain, very important concept. And there's another fringe concept that you can look it up if you have the time. You heard of big data, there's also small data. Small data is basically conversations with subject matter experts that derives insights because the person has 40 years experience, for example. Or Lego use small data, they speak to kids. They go to visit kids in their native environment in a particular suburb. And by just talking to the kid 2 hours, it garners more information than a lot of big data can. So there's this small data that's a very interesting fringe concept, and people who are enthusiastic can go and check it out. Next slide, please. Slide number 5, again, go back to people, take everyone on the journey, deliver a roadmap so that people can see where they need to go. There are inevitably toxic politics because there are people who are fearful of their jobs, do not want to learn or change. So be very strategic, and if for those lead BAs or project managers that are forming up their AI program, try to keep everyone involved so that they can see hope and ability to change to their own benefit. So what's it in for me? Very important concept. Make sure everyone's kept so that you have a minimum possible headwind when you deliver a particular program or project. The other thing to note for permanent versus contract staff is if you hire contract PMs like me or contract BAs, have the framework to capture knowledge so that when the contract staff leaves, it doesn't leave with him or her. So your knowledge management system, very important, your SharePoint sites, all your different repositories and processes. Knowledge management, basically, that's, I'm just trying to underline that knowledge management is very important. Next slide, please. This is a little bit more technical. So as in all machine learning models, if you set and forget, the environment sometimes changes, but the algorithm is still the same. So algorithms are like babies, they need to be looked after. So monitoring to ensure models are performing is very important. And as algorithm performance may decay because environment changes, but the software is still the same. Unless you have a self-learning software, which is different, which we can cover very quickly after Q&A. Is there, I think there should be one or two more. Next slide, please. There's two more. So number 7, don't mentor too early. So there's a lot of times, what I have, my personal experience is, I had my team of 3, there's actually only 3 of us delivering that V-line stuff. But we were continually being bugged by very eager self-starters asking to be mentored, but we have to deliver to a deadline. So very important to keep your eye on the ball, focus on the game. Mentorship is better when the core team is more experienced. So if you're in greenfield category, focus on the game and try to control mentoring, because mentoring takes your eye off the ball, especially if you have to move fast in a greenfield environment, which is often the case. Next, number 8. Robotic process automation. So people who've used like UiPath, Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism would know that RPA can be used for good or for bad. The trap is using RPA to do wrong things faster. That's not right, because it's very expensive. I think those software, they can charge to a tune of $400 a month for an unattended bot. So try not to band-aid. That's going to affect the reputation of the department, but there are certain legitimate cases for RPA. For example, the price bid guarantee application for an airline. That's a good application. Some RPAs can even go out to fish for elasticity of demand. For example, RPA can go to, for example, a site that sells tickets, transportation tickets or airline tickets, and they can deliberately change the cost of a ticket. And if the fish bites, the bot comes back, tells central control, hey, there is enough, statistically, there's enough demand for extra $50 increase in the airfare, let's do it. So the bot tells central command changes the price to all the distribution platforms. So RPA can be used. It's very expensive. Use it for the best use cases only. Yeah, I think that's it for this slide. Charlie, next slide, please. So final thoughts, there are actually more lessons. Let's go straight to that slide from my experience. So very often, more often than not, the bottleneck today is not really technology, it's the people and culture. Once you deliver a few AI projects, you come to a similar conclusion. And for good piece of work, focus not so much on the system, but focus on the systems of work, right? A lot of people forget, because somehow in Australia, my feeling is we're very obsessed with commercial off the shelf because it's cheaper, right? To me, that's short-term thinking. The cheaper will cost you in terms of competitive advantage. It will cost you in terms of non-customization. So depending on how world-leading a company is, I think the more global and the more of a leader a company is, the more you need to develop systems with Stanford, for example, and use commercial off the shelf only for commoditized systems like maybe HR or payroll, but different systems, like for example the booking example for air freight, right? There's no commercial off the shelf for what we want to do, but once we did it, the ROI is out of this world. So we need to look for those kind of projects. The other often neglected part in systems, technology, systems delivery is design. So a lot of IT geeks in the IT department, they are high technical person, but they may not be good artists, for example. User interface and user experience is absolutely critical to the adoption and the use of the systems that we deliver. If people don't use the system that we deliver, no matter how good it is, your benefits realization will suffer. So an often neglected area is basically the UI and UX design. So we focus a lot in Beeline, put in a lot of energy just to design the app, steer process on the ground so that people find it easy to use and want to use it. So that is an area that is different dimension, but huge payoff. Going beyond off-the-shelf products, spoken about that. Invest in talent for curve jumps. So often organizations has the view of they look only at costs. They forget about benefits. So more mature organizations will look at cost benefits, because if it costs 2.5 million for an AI twin engine, the benefit could be 20 million. So if someone looks at 2.5 million and says it's expensive, they are missing the potential 20 million benefit, for example. The last point is about the AI Automation Center of Excellence. Basically, that's just metaphor for knowing the key areas in AI that you need as an organization to spend energy and effort into building up, because your value add capacity is being taken away by AWS. The next act for the IT department is to be very good in AI in these 6 departments. Next slide. I think we've reached question time. Next slide, please. So I'll look at the questions from top down. Yeah, Shalina.
Yes, thanks. Okay. If you can't see it, I can read them out to you as well if you like.
Yeah, Vishal Puspati. So that's a very complex question. I'll try my best to answer. Other than governing the ledger, I'm just testing my creativity now. Other than governing the ledger, how does AI help the blockchain? Right. So blockchain answer live type answer. Okay, answer live. Do I have to click answer live?
That's all right. I can do that. You could just answer, and I'll move the questions as you've answered them, KK.
So the current state of blockchain is in the state of mess, because I'm not sure whether you are aware of what happened to Terra Luna and recently FTX. So the big cats in Wall Street, they're now attacking and shaking the cage of crypto. And as you know about, what analogy should I give? The cream floats to the top, right? Bitcoin is floating to the top. Bitcoin blockchain is decentralized. Anyone can find anything about any transaction in the blockchain. AI can help by making it easy for someone to find stuff. So detecting intentions, learning about the person who's finding information and detecting the person's intention, that can be a branch of AI. It's so vast, it can do so many things, right? So it's just one example. I'll let you know if I think of more. That's a good test of my creativity. I'll just go down the list, and then if there's no more questions, we'll come back to yours and we'll brainstorm together how we can use AI. Right. Crypto is quite a passionate area. I can talk very long about that, but let's go through the questions quickly. Liza, I think. Liza says, hi KK, first of all, thanks for generously. Sorry about my tongue today. I'm just a bit long day. Had a tough start, as you can know, but hopefully everyone's your time is well spent. Thanks for generously sharing your time and expertise to our BA community. Really appreciate it. Interesting projects, Singapore Airlines and etc. Two questions. First question. So many specialty areas of AI Center of Excellence. From your experience, is AI/ML capital expensive to set up? That's typically the apprehension of organizations like where I work. For example, does starter food have to be clean to be consumed by ML? Hardware must have enough processing capacity, etc. What's the typical payback period for such an investment? It's so new that in my experience, there's no typical payback period. For example, the Singapore Airlines example, I hope I won't get in trouble. We spend, all I can say in Singapore Airlines, the payback for our project, right? Within a year, we more than pay back for the project. So it depends on the quality of the project. So the payback period is depending on the intellectual capital of the program or project manager that you hire, or the people in IT that is spearheading the AI initiative. So you can go for the low-hanging fruits, or you can go for the hard draw. You're saying that it's AI capital intensive to set up. I don't think so. There is so many low-hanging fruits and basics that we can. First, you don't have to deliver AI project off the rank. What you can do is hygiene. There's a lot of hygiene activity that you can do. For example, I can just use an example of a budget airline, right? A budget airline, the data supply chain, right, can be so complicated that nobody wants to own it. So data integrity and ownership is one initiative internally that you can start with very low cost with existing employees. As long as you know what to do, map out the data supply chain, identify which are the manual data input points, right? Figure out how you can use IoT or existing IoT that's not being harnessed. For example, you've got black box in planes, but you're not harnessing, you're only harnessing it when the plane crashes, for example. Can you harness the black box on a day-to-day basis, for example? Right? So it needn't be capital intensive to set up, but what certain companies do, like V-Line, for machine learning, for example, we engage experts in the field to do it. Once we find that the return is big enough, right, and then we can do this $3 million project, right? We go to the universities to engage the teams. We know who are the best teams around. I've got experience, so we know who to talk to. So we outsource it as such.
That's
Typical
a good strategy, KK. Yeah, thanks.
Say again?
That's a good strategy. You start small, low-hanging fruits, and then extend it.
Yes, hygiene. So do the hygiene part.
Right.
The best hygiene area, in my experience, is process and data. A lot of times, process and data is in a big mess in many big companies. You don't see it from the outside. Everything looks very nice until you go inside, right? So once you fix that, the AI bit, they come in naturally. And then understanding business problems. A lot of contractors are there to do the job. If you can add one more layer of understanding how the money is made in the company, you would have a better chance of being creative and suggesting programs of work or projects that have a huge payback. A lot of it can very easily come not even from yourself, by good relationships or having coffee with veterans. Those are all low-hanging fruits, right? You don't have to come up with the answer yourself. The more heads is better than one, underutilized by a lot. So the trick is not to portray it as your idea. You have to say that it's your idea and it's a really good idea. So you can't say that it's my idea. So a little bit of human psychology would help along. So second question by Liza as well. Requirements to start AI. Have I answered the second question as well, you think?
Yes, you did, KK. That's really good. Those are really good tips. Thanks.
Okay. Next one's from Herman. What are the top 5 business benefits of establishing an AI capability? So I'll go in accordance to my own experience, yeah? So it will be different for different industries at different stage of maturity. So for a global Fortune 500 like Singapore Airlines, right? And we are the top in the Fortune 500. Because of our routing selector project, where we can give competitive rates in 45 seconds versus our competitors at 3 to 4 days. The business benefit is you eat almost all the pie. So market share, that's one, right? And let's look at Country Fire Authority, emergency comms service delivery ecosystem, the ones that can tell you before incident happens. You have advanced warning, right? So that will be, you can say saving lives, saving more lives, because the emergency services will arrive earlier because the comms network is working, right? If you take the example of V-Line, the business benefit, V-Line has to report to the government, government gives V-Line a bunch of money to run the train services to a particular specification, punctuality specification. So if we can predict that bad stuff's going to happen 2 days' time, right? And the prediction engine tells you the root cause, immediately you can use the process steering engine to steer the boots on the ground to avoid the root cause, or get ready for if trespasser is predicted, always deadline at that time, there's always trespasser. You can get your operations people ready. to mitigate or to avoid what is predicted. It's almost like Minority Report, right? So that's number 3 or number 4. That's number 3, right? That's basically I'm just trying to look for the words. That today my brain's a bit stuck, as you can see. My first few slides, I'm just talking like shit. So for the V-line situation, that's basically carrying out your responsibility to the government. So reporting and basically having a consistent delivery of service to the public, right? So that's business benefit of AI capability. So there's so many. So if you can predict, if coals, for example, that's a new one, right? This test creativity. If coals can predict supply chain blockages, right? Toilet paper, for example, or key products that the public needs, because they would, I think, coals source their not ingredients, they are products from, I think Australia, there's only 5 major warehouses. I can't remember the warehouse name again, but someone told me before. And those warehouses source their goods from other areas. If you can map the supply chain from the end point to the beginning point as early as possible, and you've got information coming in, you can actually predict that something bad is going to happen in 2 months' time. So the capability of your data engineering will determine how far off you can predict and start to do mitigation. For example, you have backup supply chain that you need to fire up, and to fire up the backup supply chain may take 3 months. And if you can predict 5 months down the road, you're fine. For example, that's supply chain management gold standard. For coals, let's say if I was working there, and I know that the supply chain is being broken because of COVID, that's on the surface, but underneath the surface, if you guys are very tuned into what the CIA is doing, they are basically breaking up the supply chain that feeds the dragon. So a lot of things happening. If you were in the commanding position in you're the strategic lead in coals, you would be jolly well mapping your supply chain all the way to the source, looking for alternate supply chains, having memorandum of understanding. When certain triggers happen, you will swap over to your backup supply chain. If I was in charge, that's what I would do, for example. I'm just brainstorming. So the business benefit is immeasurable. Basically, you get to feed the country. So those are just a few of them. Next question, Susie. What type of project methodology would normally be used for implementing AI? Is it mostly agile? So that goes right into my backyard, my favorite question. Waterfall versus agile. I would think AI will be mostly agile, because it's usually greenfield. Waterfall projects like Prince2 and PMP is usually suited to projects that's pretty much stock standard. It's like painting by numbers. You paint one first. You do step 1, then you do step 2, 3, 4, 5. You don't need to iterate. Sometimes AI, the common automation ones may be straightforward. You can do a hybrid of waterfall and agile, meaning waterfall, but you give releases so that people see benefits continuously. Certain very greenfield ones that you have to try and error a lot. Depends on the context. You will do it more agile, for example, Scrum. So mostly agile, because AI is usually greenfield stuff, which you may need to do a little bit of try and error. I think that's it. Yeah, Sharina. Questions wise?
Yes. Did anyone else have any other questions for KK?
I know it was a bit rocky at the start, but how do you guys feel so far overall? Are you guys happy? Have you learned something? Was it worthwhile? If not, why? Give me feedback, because I also want to learn in terms of presenting. I'm also learning every day.
So the way the webinar works, if anyone has any feedback for KK, please pop it into the Q&A section. Herman's just asked a question: Azure or AWS?
Oh, that relies on the IT leadership. I thought AWS was a no-brainer because they have a lot of they even have their own bots, right? AWS Next. You have got stuff like Lambda, which are parts and parcels of AI. Azure, I'm not very familiar, but certain companies have different slants. It depends on which senior marketing agent spoke to which CIO. So I can't really tell you technically, but I would hazard a guess AWS is much more mature. Azure is catching up. Google Cloud is not far behind. And yeah, so I would think AWS is more polished, but certain companies, for example, okay, I shouldn't mention internal information. Certain companies choose Azure. And we can't really choose whether it's Azure or AWS is basically part of the architecture which is actually predestined. So I would prefer AWS. Yep, that's it.
Did anybody else have any final questions for KK before we move towards the end of the webinar? Any last takers? Okay, I'll just get my screen back up again, KK. I just honestly want to say thank you very much for your presentation tonight. Your slides were amazing. I love that it was a broad overview. You gave practical applications that you yourself had been part of, and then moved into the 6 different specialty areas. And I'm almost a little bit mind blown by what is actually possible. And I think you actually raised, for someone like myself who's very new, doesn't really know much about AI, I think one of the practical take-home points for me was really that, in whatever role we're doing, as you said, we're all agents of change. And I think that I know I personally forget that quite often, but that was a really great point that you raised. So it was a fantastic overview of AI and how we can sort of start to use that in our applications and our workplaces.
Yeah, we've got the best jobs in this new era, I think.
We've just got a comment from Jared as well. Really interesting material, KK, and one of the most well-designed presentations I've seen. I completely agree with that. Really good stuff. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Jared, for that, for your feedback.
Thanks for your kind comments. I'll try to brush up on my presentation. I know that needs work.
KK, was there anything else you wanted to add before I moved into the final couple of slides around upcoming IIBA events?
Oh yeah, I wanted to cover the extra. Can I cover the extra slides? There's I planted a few extra slides.
Yep.
Maybe 3 slides, just a quick one. Would be good to share with the gang.
Yeah. Did you want me to?
I just remembered after QA, I planted more stuff in case there were crickets, right?
Let me just move my slides back. 1 second.
Sorry about the surprise. I thought people can get value from it for the techies that wanted to go deep.
Here we
just
go.
A quick 3 slides. The rest of it are all tidbits. The tidbits that they can see it.
All right.
You can scroll. If the recording's on, you can scroll to the last tidbits after the 3 slides. So machine learning models, I just want to cover quickly. For people who are interested in it, you can go and Google it and learn about it, right? Very often you hear machine learning and deep learning and AI shouldn't be that scary, because once you know the foundation, you can then learn a little bit more and then apply it, right? So I just want to demystify AI. It's not only for experts or for professors, right? Every single one of us can play active part in implementing AI and making the IT organization strong as it should be, because it's now being weakened by AWS, and a lot of IT departments are finding direction. So it's in machine learning, this is how you frame your thought. If you look at the chart, performance versus amount of data, what differentiates deep learning versus the normal machine learning is that for deep learning, basically they got the neural networks that can self-learn. The more data you feed it, the more it can give back in terms of value, right? So versus the normal machine learning, after a certain point, it saturates, and then that's the best it can do. So next slide, please. There are three different categories of machine learning models. The simplest ones are supervised learning. Basically, it's an algorithm consisting of a target and outcome variable. Example is linear regression. Linear regression is what we learn in secondary school, right? That's a straight line, y equals ax plus b, right? If you got a few dots, how do you fit it into the line so that you can predict the next dot where it would be if you know the value of one of x's. So that's the super simple one. You've got in supervised learning, you have linear regression, you've got logistics regression, it tells you yes or no, true or false. You got decision tree to classify problems. It's very hierarchical. If and else, if that's the case, then this is the outcome. If not, then it's the other outcome. And then you grow from it, it becomes a tree. And random forests are basically a collection of decision trees. It's a group of them. And there's a k nearest neighbor. So it relies on, that's the official text, relies on labeled input data to learn a function that produces an appropriate output when given a new unlabeled. So basically, to know someone, talk to people who know that person. That's the human way of explaining this, but you can Google it. You can get more from that. Naive Bayes. Basically, there is a Bayes theorem, which you can Google it. It's a very common algorithm to use. There's XGBoost. XGBoost is an open source software library, and it's used in a lot of Kaggle competitions. Kaggle competitions are where people pit AI bots against other AI bots. So this XGBoost apparently is a very popular algorithm. And the last one is Gaussian process regression. So you can look this up if you're interested. Those people who like to go deep. That's supervised learning. The next slide. So the next slide is there is unsupervised learning. There's no specific target outcome or variable to predict. So supervised learning is you put in A, you need to know the value of B, right? This is, you don't specify what you want. You use it to find out patterns. So a priori algorithms used in intrusion detection to identify a variety of attacks. K-means used to capture meaningful structure, underlying process, and group inherent in the data set. Sometimes if you give these category of algorithms truckload of data, it can tell you patterns that you didn't even know existed. For example, catching tax fraud, right? There's another very interesting theorem called Benford's theory. So Benford's law, sorry, they use it in US to catch tax evasion. And it's very amazing. There's a series in Netflix that you can, there's a documentary in Netflix. It talks about Benford's law, BNFORD, for people who are interested to go deep. And then reinforced learning is basically like self-learning. So Markov's decision process is used in robotics and automated control. Monte Carlo tree search is used by AlphaGo to learn and beat a human World Go champion. It's also used in spacecraft to sort of inverted comma think for themselves. So these are the different areas for people who are keen to go into this machine learning area for you to know and research further. And then if you can cycle the subsequent slides to the end, Shalini, because of the recording. Then those the other people who are interested, those are other fun things that you can check out online that people provide AI services for free. Yeah, if you can cycle the next.
You want me to just cycle through? No worries. So then we've got it in the recording. No worries at all. Oh. Okay, so we'll just jump me to just. So we'll just get it up on the screen and then people will have access to this.
Yeah, then move to the next one.
In the recording. It's great that you've given us lots to sort of go and do our own learning with KK. So we really do appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, my pleasure.
And I think that was your last slide. Is that correct?
That's it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. That's it.
Well, before we finish up tonight, I'll just run through our schedule of upcoming IIBA events.
Yep.
So first off, 24th of November, IIBA Sydney is hosting BA Value for ESG Framework for a Sustainable Business Model, and that's online or face-to-face. 29th of November, we've got IIBA Perth, who's holding a face-to-face end-of-year event, a toast to the end of 2022. 8th of December, and obviously I have to give this a plug because it's our event. We've got a face-to-face end-of-year event, working event, Unlock Your Full Potential as a BA. So highly recommend everyone to come along to that one. And 8th of Feb, so after the Christmas period, we've got IIBA, we're hosting an online event, Hyperautomation, a Necessity for Modern Organizations. So future events, we do invite your expressions of interest to join and support us in providing services to community members. And volunteering is actually a very, so IIBA runs off volunteers. I myself are one, and I've gained a lot from it. So if you are interested in volunteering, please do come along and register your interest there as well. Please note that you're all eligible for 1 CDU for your attendance tonight, and just keep your thank you for attending this webinar email as proof of attendance as well. You can follow us on social media and multiple different platforms there as well. Once again, thank you so much, KK, for sharing your knowledge and insights with us, sharing your experience and your tips and tricks, and for encouraging us to all, really think about AI and the role that we can play in this sort of transforming world. Thank you to everyone for attending tonight. The presentations are fantastic, and the discussions that are had afterwards as a result of the questions everyone asked are equally as important to the event. So thank you to everyone for attending. KK, thank you again for your time and the effort that you've put into sharing your knowledge with us. Enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
See you all.
KK, if you have time.
Are we off the air?
Stay. We've still got a couple of people. They're just leaving. Just got a couple more.
And don't forget to stop recording.